and welcome. Thank you for joining our Resilience Matters series, where today Alice and I, we're thrilled to be joined by Elizabeth Mansfield, who has spent the last 15 years as a hypnotherapist, NLP trainer and a coach. Elizabeth, she runs the Superman Space group, who supports parents who look after children with physical and mental health issues. So I can't wait to hear insights into mindset and building resilience. So welcome, Elizabeth. It's great to have you here.
Thank you. It's a great honour to be here. Thank you very much.
So tell us a little bit about yourself, Elizabeth.
Okay, so I think you've kind of summarised it in there. I'm a coach, I'm a hypnotherapist, I'm an NLP trainer, and they are all things that I started about 15 years ago. I had a professional background and then ended up with a period of terrible postnatal depression. And couldn't get rid of it. I knew exactly where it stemmed from. I had terrible anxiety, terrible issues with connecting with other people, not necessarily my daughter, but generally with life. And the only way I ended up kind of exploring something by chance, as so often these things are, and I ended up doing a fire walk. And in doing a fire walk, I then discovered the power of the mind, because what I had discovered was that, I was bad enough to kind of be classified as severely postnatally depressed. I had taken a job that was 150 miles away, and me and my daughter every week used to travel 150 miles. I would then do my professional job and then I'd come back. And what I'd learned was that I could leave my depression at home and I could go to work and I could be completely professional, really love what I did. I could come back and be a fantastic mother for my daughter, hopefully. And then I'd come back and I'd bring my depression and I would greet my depression at the door. Gosh. I knew that my depression was not something that was me. It was not my identity. It was something that I had some element of control and even if I didn't understand it. So that's how I got into the whole understanding of the mind and developing it, exploring it, and working with it, which is why I'm so interested in what you guys do, because it's kind of what I do. So that's how I got into it. And so I've just ended up spending the last 15 years on and off working with people around similar kind of issues, all sorts of things, on and off, partly because my daughter has a chronic health condition. I've got 2 other younger children as well. And I can't necessarily work in a traditional way with her being ill and unwell, hospital trips, hospital stays. And so my work has sort of very recently really broadened out into supporting other parents, mainly mothers, as I said, with their own issues that I understand and can help and support them with. So I've got a Facebook group that's going, and I do one-to-one sessions with people as well. So that's a little bit about me.
That's amazing. And if when we talk about resilience and actually caring for children who are ill, what sort of things do you do to help, and what sort of things do you see in your work?
What's a slightly different thing is that the reason I ended up doing this was because I had some teenage clients who were struggling with anxiety and depression and various issues. And I found that I was talking as much to their parents or to their mothers as I was to the client.
Yeah.
And I found that fascinating because I realized that actually it wasn't just that one person needs help and support, or that one person has to develop this resilient mindset. It's the fact that everybody has to develop this resilient mindset. And so it got me thinking, what helps me? I don't know if I can pin it down to any one thing, really. It's as simple as that. I just don't think I can. It's a whole variety of different things that I do for myself. And I think it's unique to every person. What I find interesting is how do we make sure that we understand that resilience is innate? It's not something we learn. It's not something we do. It's not something we manufacture.
Mm-hmm.
It's something we are.
Yeah.
And what we have to do is learn how to remember that in whatever way works for us.
Born with. And you know, how do you get back to that inner child who isn't afraid to try new things and bounce back? Oh, I've fallen over, I'm going to try again. Or I'm going to, what if I try this new thing? That curious mind that doesn't put those limiting beliefs and expectations on ourselves.
Can I share an analogy with you, which for me is this is the strongest thing that I find to remind myself when, like everybody else, you know, you for whatever reason you hit the floor, and then how do you go, right? How do I pull myself back up from there? So this was an analogy that was shared to me by somebody called Michael Neal, who I don't know if you've heard of, but one of the super coach people who I've done quite a lot of training with. And I know that he shared it, or he was explained to him, and I can't remember who that one was. So this is sort of secondhand. So we tend to think of ourselves as being kind of one of three things. So you're either sort of a Christmas tree bauble, or you can be an orange, or you can be a bouncy ball. Okay. So if you throw a Christmas tree bauble at the wall, what will happen to it?
It will smash to pieces.
It will smash. What happens if you throw an orange at the wall?
It'll come down with a thud.
Come down with a thud, yeah. And if you keep throwing it at the wall, what will happen?
Slowly it'll lose its shape and lose what's inside it.
Yeah. And eventually it will split open and all the juice will fall out. And what happens if you throw a rubber ball? You know those children's ones that sort of size that you used to throw and
I love those.
You'd hit the wall and the door and you just kind of, you know, how hard watch it go around that. Yeah. So what happens if you're like that? I mean, that you could have hit the nail on the head there, Alison. That you just keep bouncing back. And it's a really good analogy for me of how we choose to view sort of resilience. That there are some people that believe they are fragile and that they can break, and there is something fundamentally wrong with them, that they will smash when something happens. And then there's the people that are like the oranges, who will kind of can only take so much, and they can be thrown against the wall enough times, but they will juice on the inside and there'll be a mess on the inside, but the outer skin is still okay. But eventually the outer skin will split and you'll go, wow, that's a big mess. Got a lot of clearing up to do now. But our innate sense of who we are is actually that we are a rubber ball. That we just keep bouncing. What we have to do is just recognize, just like you said, Kathy, actually it's like children. That's what children do. If they fall over, they get up. You know, if they fall off their bike, they get on again. It's very much about remembering that you are the rubber ball, and you can just keep bouncing. And sometimes you'll bounce up, and sometimes you'll bounce down, and sometimes you'll bounce off the side, but you will always bounce back. And that's just crucial for understanding who we are and finding the tools that support us and encourage us to be that rubber ball, I suppose.
Yeah, I love that analogy. It's very powerful in that way of going, as you say, it's how people see themselves. So the belief they have about themselves, that you do come across people who are like, this, I can only take so much. They believe that. They feel they can only cope with so much. Whereas there are people who are just, they have such faith in themselves, belief in themselves, they're so robust. They're like, bring it on. And so they're not just resilient, they've got that mental strength inside themselves.
Yes, absolutely. And also that it's having that value instilled in you through other people and getting that support from other people as well, that you can be that rubber ball. And this is, this is okay. This is normal, because that's what children are. That's what children do. And that's where we stem from. So sorry, you have to excuse my dog barking away.
Virtual world, we're live. And that's interesting, and how do we change our belief, that says, oh, I am a rubber ball? Or I know Alice and I, we've spoken before about, actually, if nothing happens to you, maybe don't build that resilience, and actually the more you do, the more bouncing you do, and actually you're still here and you're surviving it, the better it, the easier it is to then cope with change. How do we build that in ourselves, the rubber ball?
Do you think you said something about the fact that you have different things happen to you, but don't you think that everybody has these terrible experiences that sometimes they are really, really terrible, and sometimes they're really bad, and sometimes they're not that bad but feel terrible? I wonder if actually part of it is just recognizing rather than learning. Is it just recognizing that we are?
I think you're right. It is that thing, but it's not how we build it, it's how we recognize we've got it so we can then utilize it. We forget.
Exactly.
We forget our ability.
And that power.
Yeah, that's where I come from, I suppose, that understanding and that belief. And while we believe that we have some element of ourselves or our professional lives or our personal lives or our relationships or our family or our history or our childhood, let's face it, we all bring quite a lot of baggage with us that we choose to carry around.
Yeah.
And actually, if we just maybe put some of that baggage down every so often, and instead of picking it up, just kind of leave it there. That's the natural resilience that I think we all have, but we forget we have.
When I was 10, leaving. Sorry, Elizabeth. When I was leaving junior school, I had a headmaster who's a little bit energetic, should we put it that way? But he actually wrote in my autograph book, "Learn by doing." And it felt like permission at that point, because I was at that age where you start to think about things and you start to doubt yourself. And it was like having the headmaster of the school go, continue to learn by doing, continue to explore, to step out of your comfort zone. You will make mistakes, it doesn't matter, but learn by doing. And, I have to say thank you to Mr. Bentley for that, because he just said, go on. What a wonderful thing to have somebody say to you, just at that point where you could doubt.
Totally. And do you know what I'm really interested in?
And I think the other thing that I've been... Sorry, no, carry on. Carry on.
Sorry, I do apologise. I think we're probably on something, but carry on talking, Elizabeth.
No, I was just gonna say that's where I think I'm reminded. You were saying how do I find my motivation? How do we learn how to do this? For me, it's a lot of who we surround ourselves with, and in my line of work, when I'm working with people and I'm surrounding myself and I share with people and I broaden out and I show that I'm vulnerable and other people are able to be vulnerable. And you're able to step into that space of going, wow, I'm not the only one. And like you say, you can afford to learn by doing, because you're not having to do it on your own. You can do it with other people. And I get so much motivation by people around me, rather than kind of having this protective image of the way they present themselves, by people being real and sharing their worries and their challenges and their complications and their celebration, their brilliant wins, and all sorts of things that just remind you that you are the rubber ball. That I say sometimes you bounce off the good bits and sometimes you bounce off the bad bits, but you'll always bounce.
I think there's a few things
others,
in there,
I suppose, for me.
Yeah, so surrounding yourself by great people, and those people you do, inspire to, and actually, like you say, being that vulnerable person. We see it in the workplace. managers showing their vulnerability as well. You know, we are all human. We spoke about it earlier. We came on the call, didn't we? You know, we can all have this persona, but we're all real people. And I think that's actually been quite a great thing that's come out of COVID, that I think people do show their vulnerabilities a little bit more and are more open.
Yes.
You know, we're not just this professional image, like you said, you know, you could travel all that way and be a different Elizabeth to what you decided to be at home.
And that was fascinating to me. That was absolutely fascinating, that we can present so many different images depending on how we want to be seen. And yet that's what weakens our resilience. I believe it weakens our resilience, because then we're not quite sure who we are. And we're not quite sure what strengths we have, because we, you know, if we view ourselves in a professional way, then we have an entirely different skill set to perhaps the skill set that we have as a parent, or that we have as a child to our parents, or to our friends. You know, we are different people, and I'm not sure that's necessarily very helpful. And we were equally talking about me as well about how, you know, I don't have many people on LinkedIn, because, you know, business is not something that I do in this context. It's not where my people are. And so my profile and my network connections are so small, because I can't spread myself so thin as to do. I've got to do LinkedIn, I've got to do Facebook, I've got to do Instagram, I've got to do the promotions, I've got to do the client work, I've got to, you know, because that's one element. We all have to choose which element and where we want to butter our bread, I suppose, how we're going to look after ourselves as well as our businesses.
And what you're talking about there also, and this is one of Kathy's favorite things, is like you're thinking about where your tribe is. Yes. And, you know, where you, and we always talk about how important that, you know, the being part of a tribe, having that support, having those people around you who are like you, enable you to be yourself, enable you to be your best self, and to be collaborative, and all, because it is such an important thing to know. Sort of, we're part of a worldwide tribe, but then there's a sub tribe that we all have.
Yes, absolutely. And the very fact that we're connecting is because we probably all have an issue about mindset and resilience and the belief system that will hold us and support us in place.
And you know, I love that, being yourself, and it's an interesting perspective actually. Does it weaken us having these different personas? And you know, and again at work, when I think about when I've worked in the corporate world, and there's lots of little clones, lots of people dressing the same, looking the same, or let's have the same opinion on this, you know, not wanting to speak out. And actually, I remember IBM talking to them about something. They even have a competency of wild duck, which is about being yourself, being different. We see about diversity and how different perspectives are all different. And I believe that, you know, that's getting better. I think there is a little bit more acceptance that you don't have to wear the brown suit if you work in finance and have your working day 13 and be in the office or whatever it is. You know, we can all be a different, and actually embracing that will give a different perspective. Because our customers will be of that profile. So why are we trying to be this when our customers are all different, you know? And so I love that idea of actually being yourself, you know, not necessarily having that persona and being a different person.
No, it's interesting, isn't it? How easily we can flip between those different people. And yet when we stop flipping and jumping and wearing all the different hats, we can, it's much easier.
It's far less stressful if you are just you, and it's all congruent, it all comes together, and you know, and you accept yourself, and you try. As somebody said to us a while ago, which I thought great advice, not everybody's going to like you, but that doesn't matter. You know, you, as long as you are you and you like yourself and you have the people around you who have the similar perspective, that's the way to be less stressed about, you know, being a human being.
And that's also, I think, where you're much more able to be more resilient, because you're not trying to pretend to either manage a situation, you know, to either smash into pieces, or, you know, or it's another occasion where I'm going to juice myself a bit further. You know, it's more about, well, you know, if this is me, take it or leave it, I'll just bounce back. Just kind of makes it easier. And I love that about about the mums I have in my Facebook group. It's the same thing. I'm permanently inspired by so many of those mums because of what they handle and what they deal with and how they manage it. And then we share ideas and then we talk to each other. And then it's like, oh, I'm not on my own. And as soon as you believe you're not on your own, again, I think it helps your natural sense of resilience for being able to go, it's okay. I'm okay. I'm surrounded by people that are okay. And we can get through this, whatever it may be.
And like Alison said, I think that's part of our DNA, evolutionary. The more, if you had your tribe and you all, and that's their tribe, it's their herd. The greater you can tackle things as a group. So to have like-minded people helping, supporting, that sense of belonging is huge, isn't it?
Yeah, makes it much easier.
But something that did pop into mind when you're talking about how you obviously helps young people, and then you realise that the parents needed support in their own way as well. Did you notice any themes that are different between when you work with children versus adults, or the sort of things that show up?
Oh, I have to think about that one. Did I notice any difference? Do you know what? I almost feel bad in saying this, but no.
Interesting.
No, I don't. I think fundamentally we all have the same issues. And in fact, I did a little post yesterday in the group sort of saying, everybody's learning. And give yourself a bit of grace and give your children a bit of grace. And if you're struggling with your child, what were you doing at that age and stage in life? And when I think about some of my key moments in my life, I don't know about you two, but there are some moments in life I'm not especially proud of.
But we learn from them.
And the only thing is, it's the benefit of experience and hindsight and age that we can look back and go, yeah, I'm still not overly proud of that moment, or equally, I am proud of that moment. But we have the benefit of that experience. And so a lot of the Facebook group is sometimes it's about I do a whinge for a Wednesday thing, and so people can post, because part of it is about being able to rant and just vent and just release away from their children, because it's really tricky when you've got perhaps a child, particularly if they're at home all the time. You can't escape each other. So when you're having a struggle or you're having a wobble, you can't do it in quite the same way. You've got your child there, so there's no safe space. So I have this thing that people can do, and it was one of those things that it was recognizing that what the parents are struggling with is often exactly the same as what the children are struggling with. It's just that to a certain extent we have the benefit of experience, whereas the children are still having to learn that. And so actually having a chronic illness as well that perhaps is restricting their life is much harder for them, because they're having to find their way. On the other hand, it stands them in really good stead, because they develop a whole set of different skills that they wouldn't have had, that perhaps as parents we are also learning at the same stage. So it's and I think again perhaps it comes back to the fact that we are all grown-up children, really.
And that's a nice way to put it. We're grown-up children. That's all we are.
That's all. And so then we like to think that we're better, stronger, more intelligent, more clever, more not really convinced we are. Not really.
I love the idea that we're still works in progress no matter what age we are.
Yes. And I was having a conversation with somebody the other day who's approaching her 60th birthday, and she said, and it was a long-standing client who's nothing to do with parenting, and she said, when am I going to learn this stuff? She said, I'm nearly 60. And I went, I don't know, you tell me. We get to choose. That's the brilliant thing, isn't it? We get to choose when we learn it and when we don't learn it, or not, or and it's funny,
talk about learnings, and obviously you've shared about, postnatal depression, your work with parents and children, and as your teenager, which I would have to find out more about later. But, I guess if you had a key learning, particularly from that light bulb moment as well, what would you share with people as that biggest learning?
For me, my biggest learning was linked to the fact that I could leave my depression. Mm-hmm. I could physically leave my depression. I thought depression, and everyone had told me my depression was an illness. Mm. And this was something that I had. It was something that I was. And yet what I realized instinctively was that wasn't the case. And so every time for me, when I approached somebody else, said, I need help to do this. I know what this problem is. I just don't know how to get rid of it. That was my biggest learning personally. Mm-hmm. And professionally, that was my biggest learning, because at that point I discovered hypnotherapy and I discovered NLP and the power of the mind. And my whole life has just grown exponentially because of that. And out of that has life as well. So mine are kind of quite tied together. But my biggest learning was definitely about that whole mindset thing. Yeah. Mental health is as valuable as physical health. And we have as much ability to influence, manage, and maybe even control it, if we are willing and able to learn how to do that and trust the process. But that's
which is also very empowering.
I appreciate that. That's not, again, that's not like for everybody.
So we got a tiny overlap there. My apologies.
No, I didn't hear what you said. You were talking and then it stopped. So sorry, what were you going to say?
No, just saying, I think it's incredibly empowering when you know that actually, you have the tools to help yourself. And isn't that a wonderful thing? It's not you aren't, I've got to look to somebody else to sort myself. It's all here. And when you know that, and when you've seen that, as you have in your situation, where it was so clearly demonstrated to you, then that is the best gift you can give somebody, because it's like, right, now I'm going to start working with my mind, because that will make a real difference to my life.
Yeah. And I would say the same. That was my biggest learning as well.
And that's why what you two do is so valuable and important.
Yeah. And that was also my biggest learning as well, that you've got a choice. It becomes a superpower. How much power you give certain emotions and feelings, and it's a superpower. And once you realize you influence that, and to your point, Elizabeth, you can control that. You can choose your next thought. That's a superpower in my view.
Yeah. And it comes back to being the rubber ball, recognizing that you can bounce back, and recognizing you can control it, and recognizing you can change it. That's great. How amazing. How empowering and how freeing. You get to choose.
Amazing. And I cannot believe, I knew this would happen, Elizabeth. There's so much we can talk about. I cannot believe that we've kind of come to the end of our talk, but thank you so much. Honestly, really insightful. I think it's brilliant what you do, and in helping other people, and for being vulnerable yourself, and sharing your story of your journey as well. So thank you so much. So we will be continuing to
thank you. It's been an honor and a pleasure.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much. And, we'll be continuing to run these sessions on a weekly basis. If any of our network would like to be a guest, please do get in touch with us through LinkedIn. And our details are on our website if you'd like to contact us. And also, if you go onto our website, I've got this.co.uk, we do have 101 ways to build your mental strength on our website. So please do go in and have a look. But thank you so much, and we will see you all next week.
Thank you. Bye.